I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and president of retention as a service agency, Electric. Today, I'm talking with Ben Mitchell, the founder and CEO of Privé, a performance marketing creative agency and studio for digitally native D2C brands. I've worked with Ben for probably 2 or 3 years now at this point, and across a variety of different tech platforms, and now excited to see all the work that he's doing on the agency front. So really excited to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for contacting me. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've had several ventures the last few years, huh?
Yes, Attentive, Akendo, and now this. So yeah. We'll see what the next 3 years have in store for us.
Exactly.
So before we dive into just some topics and whatnot, can you give everybody a quick background on you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last decade I've spent in the greater Los Angeles area. I was at Mute 6 for a number of years, exited when they sold to Dentsu in I think late 2019. From there was an agency partner manager at Attentive. From there was over at Akendo for several months. I've really liked working in the creative space, working with digitally native D2C brands and tech partners alike. Started Privé with a colleague that I used to work with from Twitter. He and I have built out the business the last several months, and we've kind of hit our stride.
Awesome. So could you just give like a quick background on Privé?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of it is basically a creative agency here in LA. So we have 3 studio locations, but for the most part, we're working with businesses to help them make sure that they're capitalizing all the creative content that they have. So first and foremost, we're going to come in, edit anything down to make sure that it's going to be direct response performance marketing creative that they can run on paid social. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of those things. So in one capacity, we're working as kind of an outsourced editing business for folks, making sure that we have the proper hooks, we understand the unique selling propositions, and we can really highlight the brand pillars for top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. And then the other axis, or kind of the other side of the coin, we actually have a full creative house as well, a studio, where we can create content, work with brands, help them strategize, give prescriptive recommendations if they have a team internally, and kind of be that leg to lean on.
So what are some of the things that you're looking for when you're trying to build out this founding team? What are some key sort of characteristics or things that you're looking for when going out? Because obviously these are going to be really integral components of your business, especially as it scales.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you running a business and been in business for several years, it's hard to find good people out there. I think the one thing that, you and I have in common is the network that we've created the last several years. So when Noah Winter, who was my partner, and I formulated this business, we actually had several people that I used to work with at Mute 6 reach out. We had folks from W Promote reach out. So we've actually been able to cultivate a pretty good, following and editorial staff right out of the gate here, just from our own networks. And you're exactly right. I think the most fundamental thing is making sure that as we have projects come in, not only can we hit them on the time requirements and the time bandwidth that's required, we also need to make sure that we can effectively deliver on everything that we have. So, Noah and I have taken a lot of time to find the right people, making sure that everyone is very well vetted. 3, 4, 7, 10 years of work, and the folks that are joining the team have operated 50 plus teams as well in their past.
Oh, I mean, I think that network is awesome to be able to tap into. And if you can get those referral hires, I mean, that's how we got like the first 20 or 25 team members at Electric, was all through referrals, and which has pros and cons actually, because like if your referral maybe doesn't work out, then you might have an issue with the person that gave the referral, which only happened in one instance. But then we sort of hit a wall at about 25 team members. It's like the referral well ran out, and we had to go beyond that. And that was a pain in the ass, and required us to really completely change our recruiting and hiring process. Or I say change, I should rather say create one, a real recruiting and hiring process. And then also really dig into our onboarding. because what was used to be me onboarding team members casually, and like I'm sitting with them daily, and they're just sort of immersing themselves in the culture and the way we do things. I'm no longer even meeting some of these team members, except for one time during like our introductory call, which I do with all new team members. But how do you set it up so that they can assimilate themselves into the electric way of doing business and feel like they're a part of the company in a way that is repeatable and not like one off, or just going to wing it? Which I'm still shocked that some of the first early employees at Electric even stayed for as long as they did, because they showed up and it's like a fire hose of just shit raining down upon them. There was no structure whatsoever, but it was fun. So
yeah, it is. And I mean, that's the thing. It's tough to scale team members. It's tough to scale businesses. I think just having the proper, protocols in place do help. And I think fundamentally there's not a right way. There's no silver bullet to any of this. So I think it's a lot of trial and error. But as we were saying before, I think having folks who have done this in the past, have experience, kind of know, where the ebbs and flows might lie, I think that gives us a bigger and better opportunity to try and scale a little bit quicker. The one thing that we're trying to do though is as we're taking on projects, I being the founder and CEO, I'm trying to gatekeep businesses that's coming in, because we've had a lot of folks who have reached out completely independent of our networks for work, which has been fantastic. But at the same time, you just need to throttle back, make sure that we have plenty of runway. Everyone knows their roles, and they can function in their swim lanes. And by doing that out of the gate for the first 6, 8, 12 months, I think that will really allow us to win long term and to be able to scale effectively and efficiently.
yeah, I mean, you have the benefit of having real experience and a track record and a network. Whereas when I was starting Electric, I didn't have anything. And so we would take on quite literally any work. And the first year was just me. And so I brutally worked for anybody for like free or just for like a little bit of money. But that persisted for too long, for sure, because it became an issue with clients that were not a good fit for us. And I could probably tell from the get-go that they weren't a good fit. I mean, we used to do like B2B and e-commerce too, which is a whole nother issue. But it wasn't effective at a certain point, because revenue is revenue. But when the revenue you're bringing in is starting to take away from the ability to service your other clients, and then you're too scattered, your team isn't focused, they're not specialized. We ran into a few issues there. So some of the biggest shifts that we made was saying, yeah, we're only going to be e-commerce. And then from there it was, yeah, we're only going to be Shopify Plus. And then now, like, our team just lives and breathes Shopify Plus. So they don't have to worry about, oh, is this a retention specialist for Shopify or BigCommerce or Salesforce or whatever it may be. And then our selling has been significantly easier. I mean, we're at the point now where if somebody asks, oh, we're like on Shopify or Shopify Plus and we need help with our retention marketing, like, where should we go? More often than not, we're getting the business sent our way, because we've been able to position ourselves as like, this is all we do. This is what we live, breathe, and eat, or whatever the saying is. And it resonates. Eat and sleep. And so eat, sleep, retention, repeat. That's the motto here. But it resonates way better with potential customers too, because they're not dealing with a jack of all trades 500-person agency that will sell you the moon and deliver something that's underwhelming. And they find that refreshing as well. And the thing that was the biggest unlock for me was like going on our homepage, looking at it as if I didn't know anything about e-commerce marketing. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell we do. But as soon as like that clicked, and then we focused on retention, everything sort of started to cascade through. And I think, like, if I were to do it again, I would be doing the approach that you are, which is much more, I would say, much more thought out, but also you're able to do so because of the expertise and authority that you've built up over time, which is a good position to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The one of the fundamental things that I'll do with any business that I've started or I've worked for in the last couple of years is I'll send a URL of the business to my mother. And if she can, if I can call her and say, hey, do you have an idea as to what we do? And she does, that's usually a good indication that it'll resonate with mass audiences. And obviously, like, the folks that are coming onto our website, they're pretty seasoned, they know their stuff, but just taking kind of a granular approach and getting a little bit more laser focused helps in that regard. But you're exactly right. You think thinking even about cold outreach, sending out 250, 300 emails a day, 2,500 emails a week. You want to make sure that you're resonating. You have basically your own unique selling proposition as a business, so that when someone does have a creative content need, or they need a retention play, the first person that come to mind is yourself or myself. And I think that's always helped a lot of businesses, formulate their ideas, because to your point, trying to be a huge agency doing all of these things, if one department misses the mark, it's probably going to piss off a client. And sometimes you can't afford that, and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we had a couple instances where we had poor ads performance or whatever it was. And so we ended up losing a client that otherwise was extraordinarily happy with our email and SMS and web services.
Mm-hmm.
And after so many of those, it was sort of like, yeah, this isn't working. And we're never big enough, I don't think, to truly be like an effective paid media agency, unless that was all we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But and also part of it was like, what do I enjoy doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I significantly preferred architecting like the Shopify tech stack, digging into Klaviyo, how do all these different apps create these customer data profiles for us to do our segmentation and personalization. And I'm like 100% confident with any brand that we onboard with now, we're going to be able to produce results, because it's not this black box algorithm that you're just dropping ads into and fingers crossed that this shit works. And is the landing page set up right? Is the product good? Is it not good? There's just so many things not in control. And I was never comfortable with that. So in a significantly better spot now, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's wise of you to know your limitations and know exactly where you want to play. I think that in of itself speaks, of confidence and wisdom beyond your years there. So that's kudos for that.
So what gave you the sort of the desire to take the entrepreneurial leap, for lack of a better term, and spin off and start Privé?
Yeah, good question. So the last couple of years, I've had bosses. I've had a boss that had a boss that had a boss. I've worked in varying fields, different industries, different performance creative agencies, different tech platforms, all of those things. And I've always kind of come back to wanting to be in the creative space, wanting to work with people and produce content. I think the biggest thing for me is the turn of the year. I just kind of realized that if I don't do it now, when will I do it? So that's kind of been the impetus to make the jump. But I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I've always kind of done things on my own and had side projects, because I like starting and building things. I like the tangibility of it. I like working with friends and having things come together. And I think that really starts from being a young person, or kind of being raised with my folks. When I was 16, 17 years old, I started a car washing business where I was washing people's cars for $20. I was able to buy myself a motorcycle, and my dad had no idea what was going on. It was one of those things. But I've always just appreciated, understanding all of the aspects of the business. And by being an entrepreneur, by being, by having to set up, Klaviyo for newsletters, for setting up your Xero for accounting, for taking all of these things, on your shoulders, the only person that you can, look at the end of the day to say, you've done something wrong is yourself. And it's why I've always liked golf, because it's basically, it's not a team sport. It's one person kind of pushing forward. And, when you bring on partners, you hope that they help you in that capacity, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love that that car wash story. That's great. You should open up another one. I'll come by. Move back to California.
We'll find some commercial property down in Miami. It's probably cheaper down there.
I don't know. It's getting out of control here. It's painful. I'm about a year late. But as it relates to like entrepreneurship, I think that's sort of the cool thing about like what you're doing and a lot of other people that I know. It's not necessarily the industry, or like maybe you do, but like in my case, it's not like I had this undying love for e-commerce marketing. And so that was why I wanted to start my own business. It was more so, I know I want to do entrepreneurial things. I see an opportunity here. Yes, and now I like it and I love it. I eat, sleep, and breathe it. But it's not like I'm going to be doing this till I'm 50 or 60 years old. Like
Right.
at a certain point, at least for me, you almost get bored. Like part of the excitement of growing and scaling electric was the constant learning, like constant, both from an actual e-commerce skill set perspective, especially in the early days when I literally didn't know anything, all the way through growing and scaling the business and all the fun things that come with that, from managing a team to handling operations to even doing things like payroll. That I'm glad I had that experience, because that'll translate into any net new like business ventures I do. And an agency being so people oriented, I think lends itself well to making you more empathetic and a better leader for whatever like next journey that you go on. Part of the reason why the Drinks acquisition was exciting for me is because I get to learn again.
Right.
Not that I'm not learning anymore with the agency, but it's like the fire hose sort of stopped because we're in our sweet spot now, and like we're iterating off of that, and I'm still learning, but it's just not the same. Like everything isn't new. So being on the software side now, though, it's like we have to set up a Shopify app store page. We have to build out a Zendesk support guide. We have to deal with like client success, have to do contracts for software, like with a recurring revenue model. There's so many new things that I'm getting to dive into, which is invigorating. And then also sort of best of both worlds, get to keep sort of setting the strategic direction for electric. But in 5 years, who knows? I mean, maybe I'll be working in, I don't know, maybe I'll open a chain of coffee shops because there's not nearly enough of those as there already is. But yeah, I think for me, it's more so about entrepreneurship than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's new challenges. Every day is a new challenge. And I think that keeps things interesting and keeps kind of like, it keeps you on your toes. And I think, for myself and for you, probably you as well, it's one of those things that we like those inherent challenges and trying to overcome things and just figure stuff out on the fly. And like, that's all this really is. It's just trying to take a concept and work it until it doesn't work, and then pivot and keep doing it,
Yep. I think the fake it till you make it moniker is accurate for sure. Though I definitely have seen it backfire before.
100%.
Like if you're going to fake it, you better be prepared to put into work to actually make it. Because I remember, like, especially when we just first got it started with Klaviyo, which really wasn't that long ago. Maybe it was only 2 years ago at this point, which is crazy. Like I was out there selling Klaviyo and I hadn't even logged into like the freaking platform yet. And just like complete deep dive into figuring it out. But the beauty of this industry, and I'd say a lot of industries at this point, is that everything is available online. Like if you want to become an expert in anything, you just Google search it. There's YouTube videos, there's how-to guides, any of these tech platforms, they're going to have trainings and certifications, and it really is out there for the taking for anybody that has ambition and wants to dive in and learn, which is why we've been able to be successful at Electric, hiring net new, like to either the business world or even marketing. Like we've had some people who have 10 years of experience in like a completely separate field, maybe in project management or something, and they want to get into e-commerce. So that's why we have like a month and a half of onboarding now, where they take all these courses, they get the certifications. I walk them through how we do things, and it's not like we are building rockets with Elon Musk here. Not to discredit what we're doing, but it's not the same. It's like you're not a doctor. You don't have to go to 8 years of medical school for it, which I think is refreshing, because like you can go out there and hustle your way to becoming an expert in any of these fields.
100%. Well, it's just like the text message that I sent you a few weeks ago asking you if you knew a web developer. We interviewed 3 or 4. Each person was coming back with higher and higher quotes. 2 Sundays ago, decided to get up, 6:30, went for a run, came back to the house. I sat down on YouTube. I watched 4 or 5 Webflow videos, and 24 hours later, we have a website that we're using today. And it cost me, $110. Whereas if the cheapest person I would have used would have been $7,500. And for the time being, that it'll work for us. And I think that's the notion, and kind of the key takeaway is you can find anything online. And if you have that drive and you really want to get after it, there's every opportunity for you to do so today.
Yeah. Be scrappy.
Yeah,
until you can afford to maybe not be scrappy in some areas. But how are you dealing with as you continue to grow, not having your hands in every single aspect of the business. Because I know I got to a point where I was doing stuff that I most definitely should not have been doing at the size that we were. But like the way I framed it was, it might take me an hour a month to do like our client invoicing.
Mhm.
But because I had so much other stuff going on, taking up the free time that I had with other like business responsibilities, I couldn't sit down and give like the 4 or 5 hours it would have taken to train somebody else to get them to a point where I could let go of that 1 hour per month.
Mhm.
So it just ended up being like, there's so many things I was like, oh yeah, well, like I obviously shouldn't be doing this anymore, but it's just going to be easier for me. And I don't have enough time to try and get somebody else to train it or do it right now.
Yeah.
And like, that's a trap that I found myself falling into. How are some of the ways that you're navigating empowering your team to take over sort of tasks and responsibilities from you as you grow?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, it's tough. It's tough to get yourself away and kind of step back and let someone else do their job. But I think it's fundamental. And I think the way that we've been able to articulate it and achieve it is everything that any senior person on the team will have them actually basically screen record what they're doing day over day. So if we need to pass off tasks, we have basically a Rolodex of information from accounting to legal to whatever department it might be, where they can actually tap into it and see what's going on. And anything that we're doing from a building perspective now, we're also recording, so that way we have an archive that we can jump back to later in the year, in 2 years from now, whatever it might be. And we're thinking that's going to help. And I think some of the editors that we've had on, we've filmed some of the meetings that we've had in terms of, defining, brand strategy, highlighting unique selling propositions, all the things that you're going to need in performance creative. And by having all of those things already recorded, we can kind of skip a step where we'd have to sit down with the client, have them re-explain everything. And that saves us a lot of time and energy, where the person can watch the video, pick up the vibe as to what the brand's going after, the aesthetic that the brand is going after, and we can move right into it.
Yeah, we implemented Loom across our organization,
exactly.
I think like 6 months ago, and told the team, like, if there's anything that you do in your day-to-day basis that you think could be valuable for other people to see, like, just record it, send it to our like agency operations person, and then they'll get it into our resource guide so that other people can then use it. And maybe we'll even like add it into our onboarding process.
Yeah.
And so our team has gotten way better at being able to support one another in that capacity. And like all of our audit calls, all of our proposal calls, we record as many of them as we can, unless for some reason the client doesn't want us to. But that then allows us to sort of be on the same page, because especially now, when I'm doing the selling, there's a lot of things that, like, maybe you go through the audit, it's like a 90-minute call, and I'm like throwing ideas out here left and right. Like, I like to sell. So somebody's got to execute against that selling, though. And it's not me doing the executing anymore. And so there was a point where, probably like a year and a half ago, where I wasn't setting the team up for success, because I am inherently, because of my position, I have context in areas that they would not have context in. Like an email and SMS specialist should not be comfortable or familiar with website recommendations that I'm going to be making to a client. And I wasn't setting the team up for success, because I wasn't bringing them into the fold of, here are all the different things that we're talking about. And that's also one of the reasons why we shifted from being like an email and SMS first agency to being a customer experience and retention agency first and foremost. So like all of our email and SMS specialists, they're expected to know and understand how like loyalty and retention work, how all the different apps plug into your Shopify store, because it's not enough to just know how Klaviyo operates and functions. You need to understand the customer journey to be able to have a really effective segmentation and personalization strategy. But that learning came out of the fact that client would get started, and maybe all those recommendations that I make, they weren't all coming to fruition because of the disconnect between sales and delivery, which, again, just learning all this stuff on the fly. So that was one of the nice things about not having any experience, is that we were just building processes like as we went, and there was no preconceived notion of like, this is the way you should or should not be doing things. And that still translates to today, where all the net new team members who start with us, like, doesn't matter if you have no experience or 30 years of experience, like we're expecting that you're going to bring new ideas and thoughts to the table. And the one of the more rewarding conversations I had was like 2 weeks ago with a new team member. She's like, this is the like greatest company I've ever started with. The onboarding process is amazing. Like, I love how you've set it up. Like, I feel so incorporated and involved. And she's like, but here's 2 or 3 things that like you should be doing differently. And I was like, that's awesome, because sure, it might be the best experience she's had yet, but because of how we have it embedded into our onboarding process and culture, that like that continual improvement mindset, she was comfortable enough on her first call with me to be like, hey, these are 2 or 3 things that you should be looking at maybe changing. And we implemented it, where it's not like we're not stuck in our ways at all, which people find refreshing.
100%. I think the one thing that I've noticed the last couple of years is, a lot of the bigger businesses I've worked for, everything's carved in stone. There's one way of doing it. There's no one's really going to take opinions on things. And I think, to your point, that's the only way that you can grow a business in today's world, is taking feedback from everyone, adapting as you see fit and kind of as needed, but allowing the team creative freedom to speak their mind and to make those recommendations. Because ultimately, if someone's doing it every day, they're going to probably figure out a way to do it better, quicker, or cheaper. And I think that that's a pretty powerful formula for a business to scale quickly, is by listening to the people that they've entrusted with the business.
Yeah, I think getting employee buy-in, especially with an agency where your team is quite literally your entire offering. It's not like we have some defensible software product or anything like that, though we have started to develop some things that are like unique and exclusive to us, but it's not like it's a Klaviyo or something. It really comes down to
the IP is tough there.
Yes. And so your people are really what make the company, like, truly. Versus maybe on some software companies, it's a little bit more product led than it is people led. But going into this, how much would you say you're leaning on your past experiences with me at 6 and Kendo and Attentive and so on to help sort of shape the framework of what you're doing? But now you're given the liberty and freedom to then expand upon it and do things maybe a little bit differently, but you still at least have like core concepts of what did and did not work at your previous companies to be able to help inform that.
So good question. So I think, my previous roles have prepared me very well for this. I think Mute 6 did a fantastic job teaching me how to do cold outreach first and foremost, but to speak the language. I think, Greg Gilman, Steve Weiss, and Dan, who led the team over at Mute 6, really kind of helped everyone understand the nuances of digital marketing, digital creative, direct response, performance marketing. And that's really where I had my first, kind of dive into, that world. And I think by being there, it truly shapes, my career and my path, from then on, because understanding that performance creative is here to stay, so no matter what platform is here, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, there's going to be something else in the line. We know that creative is going to be paramount and kind of very necessary for businesses to perform well. I think the Attentive and Okendo taught me partnerships, how to structure strategic partnership deals, how to get yourself into events, how to throw dinners, all of those things. So between the two things, between the 2 businesses or 3 businesses, learned about creative and outreach, and then, partnerships. And I think that's fundamental for my particular position in trying to get this business, to profitability here in 5, 6, 7 months, and really trying to grow it to where we want it to be.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think the ability to take those experiences, especially like the Akendo one, where Akendo isn't necessarily, it's not the same business, but you're still able to take learnings from that and translate it into what you're doing today is really powerful. I think almost some people give too much credence to being like industry specific or like category specific experts, when there's so many learnings that can be translated across different business types. And I think it gives you like a broader perspective as well, and helps you like shake things up a bit. So I'm glad that like I did all the HubSpot stuff and the B2B stuff, because it gave me a lot of insight into how I think the e-commerce market could evolve over time, especially on the technology side of things. And I don't think I would have had that sort of mindset or ability to do so without that.
Yeah, agreed.
So are there any like last tips or tricks that you would give people who are looking to get into performance media when it comes to creative best practices, do's and don'ts? Give us your secret sauce, I guess, with what you got going on.
Yeah, I think, listen, there's two schools of thought on influencers. I'll stay with the level-headed, nice version of it. And I would recommend any business who's out there who has a product that's easily demonstratable, find influencers in your community. You can use hashtags, find people local, friends and family, send them products, let them film 3 or 4 different bullet points, send it back, be able to cut it up. Stuff that looks digitally native, shot vertically on an iPhone, a lot of that stuff performs better than anything else in the marketplace, and it's pretty cheap to do. And I was actually just talking to a friend about this the other day. One of the best things that Mute 6 did as a business, I think, was they would have businesses and brands send a lot of their products to the media buying team at Mute 6, and then those media buyers would actually record themselves, using the products, how-to videos, unboxing videos, and it was very impactful because you get 3 or 4 different video types, concepts from one person, and it was easy to film. It takes 10-15 minutes. You don't even need a tripod, just rest your phone on something, and those usually do pretty well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's touching on authenticity, and that's what customers are looking for, is authenticity. And it's not authentic if it is like just a couple celebrities that you've obviously paid to take a picture of your product. Like, oh, cool, whatever. Consumers like bullshit detector is way higher today than it was 10 years ago. And so even the things that were working a year ago, 2 years ago, the brands that are thriving right now are the ones that evolve. And also, I think, take themselves a little bit less seriously.
Right.
Like the companies I've seen with internal issues and also with it's not as much success are the ones that are so hyper focused on brand and like a professionally curated like look and feel to the point where it's almost stale. Like there's no authenticity in it whatsoever. And so we're actually working with a new client that we just launched with. Great brand, like really cool looking. Like the website didn't have a single image of a customer, like no product reviews. Like it looked like something you would see in an art exhibit, but that's not what customers are shopping for. And as a byproduct of that, conversion rate is an issue. Right. And so there's so many things we're rolling out that aren't necessarily the preferred look and feel, but it's like, hey, look at me, I'm actually using the product, this is my age, this is what I'm using it for, and building in that trust with a potential first-time buyer is super important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you just have to be authentic, and I think the average person scrolls something like 300 feet a day. So being able to stand out, be able to be captivating, be able to see someone that looks like you doing something, doing anything, using a product, I think really makes an impact on bottom lines. Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us. Before we hop off here, can you let people know where they can find you online in case they want to work with you or just want to chat? Yeah, absolutely. We're privécreative.com, which is PRIVE creative.com. Awesome. I'll make sure to drop that in the show notes for everybody listening. As always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.